Welcome to the Unbound podcast, the podcast that explores the intersection of pop culture and steamy world of romance literature. Join us as we celebrate the voices and stories often left in the shadows and unravel the threads of joy, passion, and heartache that keep us all coming back to the page on the screen. I'm Adriana Herrera, and I write romance novels with hot and horny Latina people.
And I'm Nikki Payne, and I write steamy romance based on the books you were forced to read in high school. Alpha holes, billionaires, basketball players, hockey players, bullies, romance, loves, an asshole.
I mean, it's no secret that in the last few years, romance has gone in hard with the morally gray hero, morally graphite hero that we
Morally graphite.
It's darker than gray, babes. It's the villain, people that are unequivocally evil are romance heroes, and romance heroes that we root for. So we want to know what that's all about. And who gets to be that morally graphite hero.
Yeah. First of all, I love graphite. It's giving pencil. I love it. This is a good question. Who is actually allowed to be this asshole? Who is given the grace to stomp all over a woman's heart and put it back together again in this morally gray fashion? Turns out it's complicated.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're tuned in to Unbound, the podcast where we take you on a wild ride through the world of pop culture and romance, sometimes with our rose-colored glasses off. I'm Adriana Herrera. I write romance full of people who look and sound like my people, getting unapologetic happy endings.
And I'm your co-host, Nikki Payne, Black Jane Austen fangirl, author of Pride and Protest, a cultural anthropologist by day, and belligerent wine mom by night. Thank you all for joining us today. We're talking about all the things your man can't do. Adriana.
So what can't our BIPOC heroes do and what can't they do in these romance streets? First thing is they can't be too flawed.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. They can be flawed, but not too flawed, because then they can't be heroic. So the perfect victim trope. Often male characters of color are expected to be flawless to gain
perfect
sympathy or be seen as worthy of love. Any imperfection or flaw is magnified, unlike their white counterparts who can be multidimensional without any judgment. As Black authors, we're also caught up in rendering respectable characters because we too have internalized and been impacted by the representation in the media. So we already have like this serious hindering limits to what we can do with a Black hero. Like, you can go in, but not go in too hard, because if we write a hero who is ruthless, who is violent, who is aggressive, who is like lost his humanity, we are in territory that can get us in trouble with white readers and Black readers, because white readers can't tolerate a violent Black man, can't see him as heroic. And I'm not making that up. You can go to the bestseller list for dark romance and for mafia romance, and you will see how many of them are Black or Latino heroes or Asian heroes.
She said, Google it.
And if we do go down that way, then we're also going to be hit even from our own community saying, why are you portraying us as criminals, as gangsters, as et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
No, double down on this. Not only can they not have this incredibly dark past, they can't even be redeemed. Like, there can't even be a nice arc to say, you know what? Michael was this ruthless person, and now he is falling in love with this person. A white hero can have a dark past. It can make terrible mistakes and still find a way to be redeemable by the end of that story. However, male heroes of color are often not given that same grace. Their mistakes, when they steal, when they kill, they're seen as inherent parts of their personality. I'm a killer, I'm a thief, etc. And they're not given opportunities for growth. They stay that way or are seen as staying that way somehow throughout the entire book.
Yeah, because part of it too is because white men get to be individuals. You get to be a person with a personal history that perhaps has impacted your life journey, the reason why you've made the choices that you've made, the reasons why you've ended up in this life of crime. And there are reasons around that. And there's a inherent grace given to white men, and also like an implicit recognition of their humanity, right? Yeah. Like there's a soul to be redeemed. There's a heart to beat again in that white man who is an individual. Yep. Black men are a representation of their entire race.
Come on. The monolith. Okay? Pookie is us. Okay? Ray Ray and them, it's all of us.
All of us.
Every single time. Every single time.
All of us. Juan Rodriguez on the block is every Dominican person that ever lived.
He is. He's every Dominican poppy.
Yes.
I'm thinking of that SNL skit.
He does an accent so well that it's honestly unnerving. You should go and Google on YouTube Poppy and SNL, and you will have a very good time with those skits. But anyway, like that piece of we can't be detached from and it's something that historically, like I was listening the other day to a speech by the actress, the first Black woman to win the first Academy Award. And in her speech, she talks about being a credit to her race. And like it's confirmed by the lady who gives her the award, who's like a white woman. So like it's like historically, we have been, seen as a representation of every person that has our same skin color, as opposed to white people get to be individuals and have like a personal history that explains who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so illustrations of this in romance, like there's a lot of examples, but it's easy to look at it like mafia romance versus urban romance. Urban romance.
What is the difference, Adriana? Tell me.
The only difference between mafia romance and urban romance is that mafia romance has white men as heroes who wear suits and who get to be heroes for mainstream, for like a large swath of the romance readership. And then the urban romance has Black men who perhaps wear not suits,
but they protect their family. They do morally great things to protect the ones they love. They're the top of their crime syndicate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're always fine. They're always packing.
They're always fine. They're always packing. They're always driving fancy cars, just like the mafia romance heroes.
Very fancy cars.
Yes. They enjoy expensive cognac. And
come on.
And they are generous. Yeah, and they fight for what they believe in, right? To protect their people, to protect their territory, to protect their woman.
Yeah, absolutely. And always to protect their woman.
And so what is the difference? And yet, urban, quote unquote, is, a little too street, too ghetto.
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, you all you have to do is peruse the TikToks to see even, Black readers saying like, I'm not reading that, look at that cover, right? Like there's this notion of like, no, it's not professional. It's ghetto. It's not real. It's not, like an experience that I want to, glamorize, right? People are like, I don't want to romanticize this. And yet, honey, sis, my sister in Christ, okay? Look at what you are reading.
Look at what you are reading. And so that's kind of like the double standard, right? And I mean, I think about this all the time. And I know Jay-Z is not everybody's favorite, but I am a child of the 90s. So
Come on.
I was a Jay-Z fan before I was a Beyonce fan, and everybody knows my love for Beyonce. But I am 45. Like, Jay-Z was big deal when I was growing up. And to me, Jay-Z's journey like embodies the American dream. And yet, like, if you think about who should get to be a dark romance hero, I don't think there's anybody that's more perfect to me than Sean Carter. I mean, quite frankly, literally from the projects to a billionaire, talented, smart, a magnate, has built an empire from his wit. And yes, he's killed a couple people, but he makes champagne now.
Come on.
And so
he flips that.
Yeah, and he's 6'20", okay? He likes art.
He is a prototype.
He likes art. He collects Basquiat's. Okay, and
come on.
He's married to Beyonce. How is not every other romance novel that comes out Jay-Z or some kind of Jay-Z like man not a romance hero? And yet
there's a Travis Kelce Taylor Swift one came out for like 10 minutes.
So to me, and like, but yet a KKK, literally like a KKK, a Klansman, a man whose legacy is the Ku Klux Klan, a terror organization that has systematically violently killed people of color, queer people, Jewish people for decades. Catholics.
Yeah.
Hunted them down and murdered them for no reason. A Klansman can be a romance hero, and a Sean Carter cannot.
This actually brings me to my next point about success. The unequivocally successful Sean Carter. If he were in a romance novel, there would be 4 to 5 chapters of backstory about how he became successful. Characters, heroes of color, cannot be unambiguously successful. Oftentimes people have this stereotype that a character of particularly a Black or Latino man has to prove they're somehow worthy of or deserve their success or happiness. So if they are the CEO, if they are incredibly wealthy, they had to have gone through this landmine of work. They had to do that poem, like, life for me ain't been no crystal stair, but that's like the title of the chapter, right? In which you show them working their ass off to get there. And that's completely fine. They can't just be a CEO or a wealthy individual. They have to have this big, large backstory that justifies their status. And you don't know how many books that I've cracked open where white characters who exist in these roles without any explanation. It's just Tanner, and Tanner's the CEO, and like, take it, like literally, like you open it from the beginning, and Tanner's the CEO, and what? You know what I mean? Like, and don't ask. Okay.
Tanner was just born in a little suit with a little briefcase.
Tanner was born in a suit and a briefcase, and it's unambiguous. There's this notion of, and also like when we're writing heroes, we have to turn these heroes into exceptional Black men, into exceptional Latino men, into exceptional men, because only the exceptional is actually worthy of that, like, happiness and joy and worthy of the heroine. I think that person who is entitled to unambiguous success, if you are a character of color, it has to be really, really straightforward that you are worthy of that money and that success.
Yeah, and I mean, and even part of it too, like, and this is something that I've thought about in a few romances that I've read that are written not by Black women, that there's this implication almost that, like, for a Black person to reach that level, there almost has to be a break with their Blackness. Like, there has to be a rupture. Jeez. You know, they're not who they used to be. They've had to part with those harmful beliefs or harmful cultural things that were holding her back,
That part.
you know? And that is a dangerous, dangerous narrative because it really does imply that for us to see success, for us to be seen and taken in and absorbed as success, like we have to literally like leave behind the roots, right? Which is interesting. And also kind of comes into part of like what you were saying before in terms of like this idea that like you have to justify and there's no stain for a white person to be a legacy person, right? Like affirmative action is like not a feature, right? Like you got in because, you know, you were like the token, the percentage they needed to include. It has nothing to do with your skill, your talent. But being legacy, like your grandpappy's last name is on a couple of the buildings on the campus, has no bearing on the fact of whether you deserve to be there or not.
That part.
And it's like unquestioned. Like, sure, my dad owns this company, but I know how to run it.
Yeah, it's a given.
Yeah.
Because I am his son. My blood proves that I'm worthy of this.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, speaking of blood, I mean, you all may not know this because I write contemporary romance, but I'm actually a Regency girly, right? I cut my teeth in the Regency. And one of the things that I always find unspoken about how Regency heroes are incredibly wealthy. And like everyone's a duke, but we've already talked about that. Everyone's a duke, but like they're all incredibly wealthy, but how? How have they gotten their money? How have they become incredibly wealthy? If a Regency novel mentions the Caribbean or the colonies, it's always this way that we can push aside. We can, particularly in Regency, it's great for this. It's great for escape because all of the terrible things, all of the racism, all of the ill-begotten gains, like are happening off page. Like they're happening in this way that's not in front of your face, which is why it's very hard for like kind of Regency to, or like Gilded Age stuff to take off in the United States. But it's off the page. And there are all these ways where these heroes are allowed to be unambiguously wealthy and unquestioned wealth. And it never comes up how they got money. But I can guarantee you it's off of sugar. You know, it's off of other kind of, it's cotton, right?
Yep. Like atrocities, like money that comes from literal atrocities. And it's never alluded to. It's like, you know, he went like in his little Rumspringa. He went out there for a year. He came back, had all this money. And nobody questions why in Victorian romances, there are all these wealthy American heroines who have all this money, who are coming to the UK to marry men with titles who are now broke. Why? Because they no longer have slave money. They don't have free labor in the colonies. But guess who has labor in America? The dads of the heiresses.
Come on. And yet, like, Black wealth is seen as ahistorical, right? Inconceivable, needing to be justified. When, I mean, Black wealth empires have like risen and fallen in the United States. I mean, hair care, you name it. Like there are all sorts of particularly interesting pockets in the Northeast of incredible Black wealth. And yet that's going to need some untangling. Yes. That you're going to have to explain yourself, sir.
And a lot of ingenuity, but also like a lot of like secondary economy money, like people that did like deal in illegal things because that was the only way that they could have some upward social mobility. And yet we like all those stories are not like anything anybody's interested in. Like we are very interested in glorifying the Al Capones, right? So yeah,
and come on with the morally gray hero of color in the period piece. Like You have me thinking now. Like where is our like bootlegging black hero? You know?
Well, you have movies like Harlem Nights, right? Where you have men who are like black men in like mafia doing illicit things, but it's a comedy. They have to be defanged.
Mm.
You know?
Not real danger. You're not really in danger, folks. Nothing to see here. You're fine. Let's have a laugh.
And then you go to movies like Goodfellas, where you have brutal men. And it's cultural. It's a cultural, like it's glamorized and it's things to aspire to and emulate. Like Ray Liotta's character is someone to emulate and admire. Yeah. A brutal killer.
Yeah. How many, if you grew up in the same time I grew up, how many boys copied like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting now. Scarface.
Oh, Tony Montana.
Like, yeah. Like they literally copied everything he said over and over all the time. Like any middle school boy was just screaming out every single one of his lines. It was absolutely the glamour.
And I always think about Tony Montana specifically because same. I grew up in the 90s. I am a huge fan of The Godfather, actually. I love those movies. Trivia, my mom was an extra in Godfather Part 2. But because it was filmed in the DR. It was filmed in the Dominican Republic.
That is so cool.
But I think a lot about Tony Montana specifically because Tony Montana, had he looked like a Tony Montana would actually look, had they actually casted a black Cuban, for example, like I wonder if it would have been the cultural phenomenon that it was. And specifically that wave of immigration, which was like the Marielitos, which were men that were literally like Fidel Castro opened the prisons. Yeah. And so like that wave of immigrants had a lot of black Cubans. Yeah. And I wonder if it would have been made through the lens of someone who understood that specific wave of like the Cuban diaspora and who would have cast an actual Cuban man, would it have been the success that it was? Oh. And Tony, who had, for example, I mean, a Latin man wanting to have a blonde, blue-eyed woman tracks. As part of his like, you know, legitimacy as a kingpin, as a bigwig. But again, like Tony Montana is an interesting character to me. And again, like this is how we get to be portrayed, like not even by an actor who's an actual Latin person.
Yeah.
So
was Tony an alcohol?
Was Tony an alcohol? Yeah, I mean, toxic masculinity. Let's get into it. Well, white heroes can often display aggressive, dominant traits and still be hot. Honestly, their aggressiveness is a feature.
Not a bug.
Heroes of color displaying the same traits can be quickly labeled as threatening or dangerous and scary. Due to racial biases, aggression in black men is seen as terrifying. And in white men is seen as appealing. Like, choke me. Like, you are 7 feet tall. Like, the idea that a strange 7 foot tall black man is like stalking you.
Yeah. Yes.
Would it get the traction that it gets in romance when it's a white hero? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Just imagine just chanting, break my back at a, at like in a urban place where someone's like playing a street ball game, crack my back. Like, no.
I have cracked my back to a 7 foot tall basketball player, point guard, or a defense linesman in a football game. I guess hits different.
It really does. I want us to go on an imagination journey. Okay.
Put our rose-colored glasses on.
Exactly. Let's close our eyes now. Imagine a hero who buys the heroin from her father, takes her against her will, maybe locks her up in a room, maybe feeds her some, cream corn under the door, okay, coerces her into sex, gets off on her fear, is a criminal, right? When he's not with her, like trying to, make her come, he is killing. He makes his money from illegal things, drugs, gambling, prostitution. He probably is a pimp or has prostitutes, or there are women around him that just can't satisfy him anymore because he's thinking of that tenderoni locked in his basement. Okay? And he kills his adversaries ruthlessly. And I ask you, when you thought of this person in your imagination, was he a Black hero?
Can he be a Black hero? Like, honestly, can he be? And again, like, I want to stress that I have no, like, I think dark romance satisfies a particular id. I think I understand the reasons why it's intriguing, why it's appealing, why it's compelling. But what my question is, what, like, the whiteness of it all is the reason, is what I'm asking. And like, who gets to be that kind of hero? Gets to be that kind of hero. And I mean, you see it, right? Like Mayans and Sons of Anarchy is a perfect example, because Sons of Anarchy came first, but it was a very violent motorcycle club, did every kind of crime you can imagine. And women were treated horribly. And that was the leader, Jackson, was this gorgeous white blonde man. And that show pretty much launched a subgenre of romance, the motorcycle club romance golden era, and which continues today to be a very popular subgenre, which, has a lot of questionable heroes. Came from that show, from the Sons of Anarchy. Mayans is a motorcycle club show with all Latin men. And it is just as ruthless, it is just as violent. It is not as popular with audiences as Sons of Anarchy was. And I don't see, I will say this, there are Latina authors writing, Marie Maravilla, Jade Hernandez, Santana Knox, Amy Oliveira are all writing motorcycle club, syndicate romance, but they're not nearly as popular as the motorcycle club romances that are with like all white members.
Right. White members who are also probably given a range and depth of emotional experience.
Right.
This is another thing that your man can't do. Okay, this is a big one for me. BIPOC characters can't get too multifaceted. This is a big one. This is one that I see often with Black readers and reviewers, where when you give a character incredible amounts of emotional depth, or like white characters, for example, are allowed this full range of emotions, vulnerability, anger. But male characters, I'm using this honestly mostly from the Black experience. They're often pigeonholed into being perpetually stoic or even overly emotional, and when they run this range of having multiple types of experiences, that is often seen as not Black enough. And I feel like there are these ways where we do this to ourselves, sometimes to protect our own culture in a way that we understand that like Black culture is often siphoned off. People dip their little straw into Black culture and have these, ostensibly white characters saying or doing these Black things to add comedy. So I understand the need to build walls and close ranks around like what Blackness is. But oftentimes what that also does is when you are writing this character, building this character who is operating sometimes outside of those walls, then that character gets panned for this isn't Black enough, or this isn't enough, like something's not hitting. This character didn't ring true to me. And those are also wrapped up in these ideas of what Blackness is. And that's harmful. That's harmful as well. So, oftentimes this reads as misogynoir. This is like this fancy word that is, honestly, it is a combination of misogyny and anti-blackness. And what that does is force these Black men into, one, having extremely flat experiences and having extremely entangled and non-complex relationships with Black women. And I think that is one of the problems that I find myself like writing sometimes into and trying to write out of writing these characters who can have these kind of loving and complex relationships with people around them and can think within and without these boundaries that we have put up. And also, like, people outside in the mainstream have also decided this is Blackness and this is not Blackness, right? Like a Black person in a metal band, right? Or a Black person who owns a bakery and is queer, or like there are all of these experiences where I think there's room and a lack of possibility for Black male heroes in a way that white heroes have incredible amounts of possibility for what they could be, what they could think, how they interact with the world, and how they present themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of it too is that piece of like the possibilities that exist for us, right? And I mean, it's and what and like readers really being able to imagine us beyond what we've allowed to be for so long in fiction and in the media, right? And I think that's work for us. I am not suggesting that anybody there's plenty of Black authors, Indigenous authors where people of color, Latinx authors that are writing these stories. But what we need is like within our communities and also in the wider reading world for people to be able to just like give themselves permission to imagine us beyond what we have been. Like, and there are like Christina Forrest, the neighbor, the
neighbor favor and the partner plot.
Neighbor favor. I haven't read the partner plot, but the neighbor favor is like a great cinnamon roll hero.
Who she's also like making this very interesting point about the rigors of Black excellence and the way that it can, kind of force you into this way of seeing yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I mean, the neighbor favor is a great example.
Natalie Kanya, A Dish Best Served Hot, has got everything that you want in a romance. It's got a veteran single dad hero who's really grappling with being softer, with being a man that is able to feel his feelings, and a heroine who has like a history, like who has to be hard because of her upbringing. And so like they find softness in each other and like really complex stories. And so I think it's that piece of readers being able to give those stories a chance and really being able to not come to our stories of like, this is my expectation of what a story with like a Black Puerto Rican man and like, a Latina heroine or whatever should have.
Yeah.
And also the other piece of that we wanted to just kind of ponder is we can't like what people of color like, right? Like those, like we are like, we're in this like stereotyping and like toxic renditions of who we are and reductive renderings of who we are have put us in this really tough spot where we feel like if we talk about how much we love plantains, we're pandering.
Yep.
Right. So then you can't write a Black man who loves himself some watermelon in the summer.
You can't do it. You literally can't do it. Everyone's going to roll their eyes. Oh, a Black guy loving watermelon. Oh, we're doing this.
Yes, like you can't write a Latin man who has had a problem with cheating. Or like the mystical, spiritual Asian hero.
Yeah.
because those things in like the under the white lens have been made caricatures.
They are. They're cultural shorthands that everyone is like incredibly familiar with. And so you want to turn your character away from that, right? In a way to say like, we are not a caricature, we are not a monolith, right? But what it does is like rob you of these, some types of cultural experiences that feel like something that this character would do. I mean, if they're sitting on a porch having a family picnic and there's no watermelon because, you're making a point, congratulations, right? But like, was that true to that character? And how much are we moving our characters to manage and hide away from like the, terrors sometimes of the white gaze? And is that still art,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that piece of being able to tolerate the idea of people who are like, what is a traditional Black
Yeah.
person, like a Black girl? Like,
Yeah.
do we all love Beyonce? Most of us do.
Yes.
But we also like, some of us also like Taylor Swift. And so, like,
Yeah.
the piece of it is that, like one of my favorite non-traditional Black girls is one named Jan, who is the sister of Nora, the heroine from Sex, License, Sensibility. And Jan is giving Solange, but Solange with the pixie cut sometimes, okay?
Yeah.
Solange
with the
Solange in the elevator.
Yeah.
She's giving that Erica Badu, that Lisa Bonet, like spiritual, like my vibe brings the boys to the yard. Like they want to get up in this yoni. They want to know
Yes.
what's happening
Yes.
under this caftan.
Absolutely a crocheted caftan. Absolutely. That's what she's wearing. I love that you bring up Yan because she is to me this representation of she's absolutely a Black woman just by virtue of the way that she's grown up and the way that she experiences life and the lens by which she sees life. But she's also a Shakespeare scholar. She's a very bad expert on mushrooms. She is like, she's all of these really complex and complicated things. She's a tarot reader and she's building her own experience and stepping outside of the bounds of what a lot of people would imagine is the place for Black women. And those are the types of women that I like to write, that are grounded in who they are and what their experience is, and their lens is their lens, but are also pushing beyond what they know and pushing outside of that. Another great example of that to me is Regina Black's Rachel in The Art of Scandal, who is something that we don't see a lot, is this Black trophy wife, that she is just bought and sold to look pretty and be great for campaigns, for this progressive, for this progressive politician. And she is bought to be, how you mentioned Tony Montana in, the kind of blonde haired, blue eyed way to represent status, right? And like, imagine like putting this Black woman as a representation, one, of your progressive politics and your status as this type of man. I mean, it's saying something different about what status means. And I love a messy trophy wife as a Black woman.
Yeah, and she is messy. It was one of the things that I really appreciated about her character, even though, because I am so used to reading about Black women that have it all together and like understand their situation clearly and know where they have to get to and have no opportunity to be messy, to be flawed, to flail, right? Like that to me was a great example of like, this is someone that has to grow through the story and doesn't start out knowing even who she is anymore. I think Talia Hibbert writes that kind of heroine. Talia Hibbert really writes heroines that just are Black. That's the body they're in, and their messiness and their like insecurities and all of that stuff that comes out of just like being a woman in the world. is the
Yep.
story. And the story is
Right.
not, I'm like Black and this is like what I'm doing. Like, I think
Yeah.
there's just a lot of authors doing that kind of work. And it is important because it really is expanding what
Yeah.
Black culture can be, or the Black experience can be,
Right.
in romance.
I mean, even outside of books and media, like one of my favorite heroines is from Abbott Elementary, right? Like, she is quintessential. She is Black, right? In the way, in her experience, in the way that she's grown up, and I mean, even in the neighborhood that she is teaching, right? But she is also interestingly out of step in a lot of really like important cultural ways that people would imagine this is Blackness, right? And it's her out of stepness with that endears us to her, to say like she is supposed to think this way or love this purse, right? Or act in this particular way, right?
Is a nerd.
She can't.
She's awkward. She doesn't really dress very well. She's not smooth.
No.
She doesn't know what a
Afraid of ladders.
Yes. She doesn't know what a Telfar bag is. She literally is, she's out of step with a lot of, what would be considered like black woman in 2023. And yet she literally, I mean, she's from Philly, like one of the historically Black cities in America, where like Black wealth, the legacy of like Black excellence is like alive, and you feel it. And yet she really is like a girl that just likes nerdy things. And the nuance, even in her romance, which is honestly one of the great romances happening right now in television.
The best slow burn in like happening right now.
And he is a non-traditional Black hero, right? Like he is also kind of nerdy. He's not super suave. He's not big, tall guy. He's like skinny, short guy.
Yes. And he's rigid and he's exacting and he's persnickety.
Yeah.
And he's a gardener. I just like everything about him, right? And especially in, traditionally in the United States, like Black culture has been like at the avant-garde of cool, of like what it means to like act and be cool. That's mostly aped from Black culture. Like phrases like "you go girl," which is like, your grandma can say that now, but in the 90s, that was Martin. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
oh my gosh.
Saying all these things. So like taking that, what you see is like the avant-garde of cool and bringing that back to two individuals, right? Who are out of step with that, but also, part of that culture as well. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. I'm going to leave this as a bookmark for the two of us for later. I think we need to do an episode of A Different World Than Living Single. And
we
absolutely do. And what that, I mean, I think Abbott Elementary is a direct descendant from that moment in time in television.
Yes, from Kyle Barker, who was my first love. Yes. Okay? Kyle and Max. Oh. Is there a better enemies to lovers than them? There's not, ma'am. No. I'm sorry.
All right, let's
miss me with
bookmark. Okay, all right. So, I mean, lastly, we have come, I think, to like what we are calling.
We can no longer be delicious, and I'm mad about it. There's a ban on delicious skin. And y'all, we did it to ourselves. No caramel skin, no cinnamon color eyes. One of my favorite songs, D'Angelo, when he's describing this beautiful woman, okay? He says her skin is caramel with the cocoa eyes. And you saw her. Did you not see her? You saw her, right? We did this to ourselves.
You saw her, D'Angelo. My gosh, what a cultural juggernaut. But part of it is that we now have to ourselves, because of, again, like the mistreatment of descriptions of our bodies in media and in fiction, we came to this place where like what you're avoiding saying that it's brown skin because brown skin is considered something that is not attractive. So we've gone to this place of like, then we can't be described as something delicious like brown sugar. And yet in romance, you know, white herons can still have milky skin, can still have creamy complexions, can still have that alabaster glow. And we can't be cinnamon anymore. We can't be caramel. We can't be toffee. We can't be delicious brown sugar. And it's honestly a handicap to us in terms of like our writing, because that is part of the convention of language in romance. Like you have to use evocative language. You have to use the lush descriptions. And what is more lush than caramel?
Oh, come on. Right?
Yes.
Cinnamon sugar thighs. Like you see it. You see it.
Just like you want to bite into it. You know what I'm saying?
You want to bite. Here's the thing is, and I'll just say this a lot, like I want to write a character that someone wants to bite into. You know, I want to write a character that you try to look for a napkin to dab the corners of your mouth. Like that is the heroine I'm trying to write.
That's the mission. And a man that sees it thinks to himself, my God, she looks like perfect cake. And I want to take a bite out of her ass because it looks so delicious.
It is. Okay, even when you said that, I just bit my knuckles because yes, you want him to say, I want to take a bite of that cake.
Yes. And I think part of is like and this is part of like the landscape we navigate, right? Where we are, because so much of the narrative of how our Black characters, Latin characters, Asian characters have been, you know, like, and like we could talk for days about like objectification and like over sexualization of Black men, right? Like, okay, now we can't say that Black men have big dicks, baby. They have them. Why can't we say it? Why can't I say it? Okay,
you can't.
He's a shower, not a grower, and we should say it. We should speak on that.
Yeah, we should speak on that, but also, just personally, this is just a little aside. Romance conventions. I know people want like, you know, hey, let's all, you know, think about like different sizes, but I mean, I don't know if this is going in, but like, look, like I'm not writing a hero with a tiny little thing that they got to work through, you know, and that's like, you know, I can't do it. Like romance conventions say, you know, make it huge or get out of here. Like you can't. I'm sorry.
Part of it is but because we've gotten into this place where, like, you know, the Mandingo trope is a problem. Okay, it is a problem. It is true and real that a lot of white people were, you know, fascinated and fetishized Black men's penises. But then that means that we no longer have the ability to talk about a big dick. And so, again, I think we just have to rethink where these tropes come from and where, like, and the harm was done. But that doesn't mean that if I have a hero who is a particular type of man and has a particular type of physical attributes, we can't say it and we can't name it.
Right.
And so I think that, like, and then you have all these, you know, white heroes that can have dicks the size of a, like, you know, of a bat. Like they keep going and score a home run. And yet, you know, like we have to watch our words on how we describe the bodies of Black men because they've been objectified. But then there's a difference between objectification and appreciation, right? And it has to do with gaze. And it has to do with gaze, language, and how you see that character. If you see that character as just like a vessel to like sap pleasure a white woman, then that's a problem. But if you are seeing this as a literal like God, he is beautiful. That brown skin is popping. Those muscles are giving. That hair is just right and on point. Those lips, baby, are everything. and you see him as the
Appreciation, love.
beautiful man he is, go ahead and describe that dick in detail.
Come on, baby. Come on, baby.
Tell me about
Yes.
the veins. Like, I need to
Tell
know
me.
how it looks.
Tell me about the veins. I want detail.
And so that is, again, where we, like, this is, I think, part of what we can do in terms of, like, not as readers and as authors, to, like, reclaim the things about our beauty and the men in our communities that only we can truly, like, appreciate and
our culture and
like, all of it, and, like, just give them everything they can and should have, because they are heroes. They are romance heroes.
Yeah.
They're hot as fuck. They can move. Those hips, baby, like, they were oiled from the womb. Okay.
Come on, baby.
And they're sexy. They're gorgeous. And I think they should be allowed to be any kind of man that they are in our story, in the narrative that we have in our head. And, like, they deserve to be the romance hero just as they are. Like, we don't have to have these qualifications of what a Black man has to be or do to get to be a romance hero, just like we don't do it for white men.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think that's all for us today, folks. We got to head out of here. There's some new drama on TikTok and we have to check it out.
Yes, we need to head out. And I'm going to have to go and read Alexandra House's Them Boys series, like, just right now, because that conversation about penises just, like, has me, like, thinking about them, and I have to go revisit that series.
Join us in 2 weeks as we unfasten the laces of another pop culture phenomena, and connect with us on Instagram at Unbound Pod and share with us a story of a BIPOC hero that you haven't seen and that you wish there was.